HOA Karen tried to steal my ranch with solar panels. Then my 100-year-old trap destroyed her. Hey y'all, welcome back to HOA Karen Files, the one place on YouTube where we dive headfirst into the craziest, most jaw-dropping HOA dramas this side of the Mississippi. I'm your host, and today, we've got a story that's going to make your popcorn pop and your jaw drop. Picture this: a lone rancher, a shotgun named Loretta, and a power-hungry HOA president who thought she could steamroll over 200 acres of family land with her shiny solar panels. Spoiler alert, she didn't just step into a fight. She tripped over a 100-year-old legal trap that's about to blow up in her face like a 4th of July firework gone wrong. If you love a good tale of petty tyrants getting their comeuppance, stick around, because this one's got it all: drones crashing, alpacas spitting, and a showdown that'll leave you cheering. And hey, if you're new here, smash that subscribe button right now. Join the HOA Karen Files crew so you don't miss a single second of the chaos. Drop a like if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, and let me know in the comments. What's the wildest Karen move you've ever seen? Alright, enough chit-chat. Grab your coffee, buckle up, and let's ride into this Wild West showdown on Callahan Ranch. It all kicked off on a windy Tuesday morning at Callahan Ranch, my little slice of heaven out here in the sticks. 200 acres of rolling hills, grazing horses, and enough quiet to make a city slicker twitch. I'm Jake Callahan, 5th generation to work this land, and that morning, I was just minding my own business, sipping black coffee on the porch while the sun peeked over the horizon. The air smelled like fresh hay and freedom, with only the occasional cluck from the chicken coop breaking the silence. Then, out of nowhere, this weird buzzing sound cut through the peace, like a swarm of drunk bees on a bender. I squinted up at the sky and saw it. A drone, no bigger than a dinner plate, hovering over my property, its little camera eyeballing my chicken coop like it was casing the joint for a heist. I set my mug down on the porch railing, scratched my beard, and muttered, "Well, ain't that cute?" I figured it was some kid from the new Pinewood Estate subdivision next door, messing around with a Christmas gift. But when that buzzing pest dipped lower, zooming in on my prize pig Lucy while she wallowed in the mud, I'd had enough. I reached inside the screen door, grabbed Loretta, my trusty 12-gauge shotgun, and stepped back out. "Last warning, buddy," I said to no one in particular, lining up the shot. One loud boom later, that drone turned into a fireball, spiraling down like a drunk pigeon and smashing into a hay bale by the barn. Sparks flew, smoke puffed up, and I shrugged. Guess that's that. I figured that'd be the end of it. Maybe a ticked-off teenager would show up later, whining about his toy. But nope, I'd just poked a hornet's nest I didn't even know was there. Not 20 minutes later, I heard tires crunching gravel out front. A white SUV rolled up, all shiny and smug, like it belonged in a car commercial instead of my dirt driveway. Out stepped a woman who looked like she'd walked straight out of a suburban nightmare. Bleach blonde hair teased to high heaven, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, and a phone clutched in her manicured claws like it was her lifeline to the universe. She stormed up to my gate, heels sinking into the dirt, and let loose a screech that could have woken a coma patient. "You just destroyed HOA property, you redneck lunatic," she hollered, jabbing a finger at me. "I'm calling the feds on you. This is a federal crime. Do you even know who I am?" I leaned against the porch post, Loretta still in hand, and gave her my best lopsided grin. "Morning to you too, ma'am. Welcome to Callahan Ranch. I don't know you from Adam, but I'd love to hear why your little spy plane was creeping on my pig at 6 in the damn morning." Her name, she declared with all the pomp of a reality TV star, was Melinda Grayson, president of the Pinewood Estates HOA, the fancy new neighborhood that had sprouted up next to my land like a bad rash. But in my head, she was Karen from the jump, because if the shoe fits, right? Karen informed me, with the kind of smugness that'd make a peacock blush, that her HOA had legal authority to install a community solar grid on my property. Apparently, it was some grand green energy scheme to benefit Pinewood, and my land just happened to be in the way. I glanced over her shoulder, past the rickety fence that had marked my family's boundary since the 1800s. Sure enough, there they were, a crew of guys in neon vests, hammering stakes into my dirt, stringing wire, and unloading solar panels like they owned the place. Orange flags fluttered in the breeze, planted a good 50 feet past my property line. I turned back to Karen, eyebrows raised. Lady, you're barking up the wrong tree. This land's been Callahan turf since my great-great-granddaddy chased off bandits with a rusty musket. Ain't no HOA got a claim here. She smirked, pulling a stack of papers from her knockoff designer purse and waving them like a victory flag. Oh, you poor thing. We've got rights to use adjacent unzoned land for sustainable projects. It's all in the bylaws. You'll barely notice it. And hey, you get free shade from the panels. You're welcome. I didn't bite. I've dealt with enough slick-talking types to know when someone's blowing smoke. Shade's nice, I said, tipping my hat, but I don't recall signing up for your little science fair project. You might want to pack up your toys and skedaddle before this gets messy. Karen's smirk faltered for half a second, but she doubled down, crossing her arms. This is happening, Mr. Callahan, whether you like it or not. The board's already voted. You can either play nice or deal with the consequences. She spun on her heel, wobbling back to her SUV, and peeled out, leaving a cloud of dust and a bad vibe in her wake. I watched her go, then set Loretta down and pulled out my phone. Time to call in the big guns. I dialed Donna, my family's lawyer, a 75-year-old firecracker who once threatened to sue the county over a pothole that messed up her Buick. She picked up on the second ring, her gravelly voice crackling through. Jake, what's got your britches in a twist this time? Donna, I said, staring at the construction crew tearing up my field. We've got an HOA problem. Some lady named Melinda thinks she can turn my ranch into her personal solar farm. You free to dig into this. She cackled like a witch brewing trouble. An HOA, huh? Oh, honey, I've been itching to take one of those clowns down. Give me a day, I'll find out what they're up to. This is going to be fun. I hung up, took one last look at the orange flags flapping on my land, and grinned. Karen had no idea what she'd just started. Callahan Ranch wasn't just dirt and grass. It was a legacy, and I'd be damned if some HOA queen was going to waltz in and claim it. Little did she know, she wasn't just picking a fight with me. She was about to tangle with a trap set a century ago, and it was going to be one hell of a show. The next morning, I woke up with the sun barely creeping over the hills, a mug of coffee in one hand, and a fire in my gut. That little showdown with Karen yesterday had lit a spark, and I wasn't about to let her HOA cronies turn my ranch into their personal playground. I pulled on my boots, grabbed a shovel and my old metal detector, a beat-up relic from the 90s that still worked like a charm, and headed out to the eastern edge of Callahan Ranch. That's where her crew had set up shop, tearing up my dirt like it was a sandbox at recess. I needed to see what they'd done overnight, and maybe figure out why this patch of land, my family's pride for over a century, had suddenly turned into Karen's golden ticket. When I got there, I damn near dropped my coffee. It wasn't just a few stakes and flags anymore. Overnight, those Pinewood yahoos had gone full-on construction mode. Deep trenches snaked through the field, at least 3 feet down, with concrete footings poured and curing in the morning chill. Steel poles jutted up like rusty teeth, holding solar panels that gleamed in the sunlight, and a tangle of wires ran underground like some sci-fi monster's nervous system. They'd even brought in a portable generator, humming away like it was mocking me. Orange flags stretched a good 100 yards into my property now, way past the old fence line my granddaddy rebuilt after a tornado in '63. I stood there, jaw tight, watching a couple of hard-hat guys unload more gear from a flatbed truck. This wasn't a project. This was a freaking invasion. All right, Karen, I muttered, kicking a clod of dirt. You want to play dirty? Let's see what's really under here. My great-great-granddaddy Jeremiah Callahan always called this stretch the steel line. Growing up, I thought it was just some old-timer nickname. Maybe because the soil was tough as nails or the wind hit it harder than anywhere else. But the way he'd talk about it, half drunk on homemade whiskey with that glint in his eye, always stuck with me. Jake, boy, he'd say through my dad's stories, if anybody ever tries to take the steel line, you dig down deep. I left something there to make him regret it. I'd always figured it was just Jeremiah being Jeremiah, mean as a rattlesnake and twice as petty. But now I was starting to wonder. I fired up the metal detector, its scratchy beeps cutting through the quiet. I swept it over the torn-up ground, dodging the trenches and sidestepping a guy in a neon vest who gave me a dirty look. Hey, buddy, this is a work site, he barked, wiping sweat off his forehead. You can't be here. I tipped my hat, keeping my cool. Funny thing, buddy, this is my land. Y'all are the ones who can't be here. Tell your boss lady she's got a reckoning coming. He grumbled something about permits and stomped off, but I didn't care. The detector was pinging like crazy now, zeroing in on a spot near an old oak tree Jeremiah used to sit under. I dropped to my knees, started digging with the shovel, and after about 20 minutes of cursing the hard clay, I hit something solid. Metal clanged against metal, and my heart kicked up a notch. It took another half-hour of sweat and grit to unearth it, a rusted iron plaque, about the size of a dinner tray, bolted into a slab of bedrock. I scraped off the mud with my sleeve, and there it was, etched in blocky letters like a tombstone from the Old West. Covenant Callahan, 1919. Any structure or works built without written consent on the eastern boundary of Callahan Ranch, as surveyed and filed with the county, shall revert to the Callahan family in full ownership, with rights to claim all damages and costs. Trespassers beware. Signed, Jeremiah Callahan. Below that, a faded map carved into the iron showed the exact coordinates, matching the steel line to AT. I sat back on my heels and laughed so hard I scared a flock of crows out of the oak. Well, I'll be damned, Jeremiah, you old buzzard, I said to the sky. You really did it. Turns out, the stories weren't just tall tales. Back in 1919, Jeremiah had gone toe-to-toe with a railroad company trying to cut a line through his fields. He didn't just win. He took their settlement money, marched down to the county courthouse, and filed this covenant to lock down the steel line forever. Dad used to say it was Jeremiah's way of flipping the bird to anyone who'd dare mess with us after he was gone. And now, 100 years later, Karen had waltzed right into his trap like a deer in hunting season. But I wasn't done digging, not yet. I hauled the plaque back to the house, set it on the kitchen table, and started rifling through the old trunk in the attic where we kept family junk. After tossing aside moth-eaten quilts and a couple of rusty spurs, I found it. Jeremiah's journal, leather-bound and falling apart, stuffed with yellowed pages. I flipped it open, and there, in his spidery handwriting, was the whole story. Them railroad bastards thought they could buy me out with a few bucks and a handshake, he wrote. I took their cash and made damn sure no one ever pull that stunt again. The steel line's my legacy. Let him try to take it, and they'll choke on their own greed. He'd even sketched the plaque, noting he'd buried it deep for the grandkids to find when the time's right. I was grinning like a kid on Christmas when my phone rang. It was Donna, her voice crackling with excitement. Jake, I dug into Pinewood's permits. They're flimsier than a paper umbrella in a hurricane. What did you find out there? Donna, I said, holding the journal like it was gold. You're gonna love this. Jeremiah left us a legal nuke. I've got an iron covenant says anything they build on the steel line is mine, plus damages. And I've got the proof right here. She hooped so loud I had to pull the phone away. Hot damn, boy. That's a game changer. I'm coming over. Don't touch a thing till I get there. 30 minutes later, Donna's beat-up pickup roared into the driveway. She hopped out. All 75 years of her, decked in a floral blouse and orthopedic sneakers, lugging a briefcase and a magnifying glass like she was Sherlock Holmes on a mission. She plopped down at the table, poring over the plaque and journal while I brewed more coffee. This is airtight, Jake, she said, tapping the iron with a grin. Filed, stamped, and never challenged. They didn't just trespass, they handed you their whole damn solar grid on a silver platter. And with damages? We're talking big bucks. Before we could dig deeper, a shadow fell across the window. I looked up to see old Hank Grayson, no relation to Karen, thank God, shuffling up the porch steps. Hank was a wiry guy in his 80s, a retired county surveyor who'd lived next door since I was in diapers. He tipped his faded ball cap, peering at the plaque. Heard you had some trouble with that Pinewood bunch, Jake. Saw him tearing up the steel line yesterday. Figured I'd check in. Hank, I said, sliding him a mug of coffee. You ever hear about this covenant? He chuckled, a dry rasp like sandpaper. Oh, sure. Jeremiah was a legend round here. After he stuck it to the railroad, folks said he'd cursed the steel line. Said anyone who crossed it'd lose more than their shirt. Guess your HOA lady didn't get the memo. She's about to. Donna cut in, scribbling notes like a woman possessed. Hank, you got any old maps or records from your surveyor days? We're building a case to bury these clowns. Hank nodded, sipping his coffee. Got a box of 'em in the shed. I'll dig 'em up. But watch yourself, Jake. That Melinda gal's got a mean streak. She won't go down quiet. I leaned back, staring at the plaque glinting in the sunlight. Let her try, Hank. Jeremiah's been waiting 100 years for this fight, and I ain't about to let him down. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the barn doors. Karen's crew was still out there, digging deeper into my dirt, clueless about the storm brewing. They thought they were building a future. What they didn't know? They'd just unearthed a past that was going to drag him straight to hell, or at least to court. And I couldn't wait to see the look on Karen's face when it hit her. The morning after we unearthed Jeremiah's ironclad covenant, I was feeling like a cowboy who'd just drawn the winning hand in a high-stakes poker game. That plaque wasn't just a rusty old relic. It was a legal grenade, and I was itching to pull the pin. Donna had stayed up half the night drafting a cease and desist letter, a masterpiece of lawyerly sass delivered via certified mail to Pinewood Estates' HOA office. It gave Karen and her crew 72 hours to pack up their solar circus and get the hell off my land, or face a lawsuit that'd make their HOA dues look like pocket change. I figured that'd be enough to spook him into retreat. Boy, was I wrong. By noon, I was out in the barn fixing a busted gate when that familiar buzzing sound hit my ears again. I stepped outside, shading my eyes against the sun, and there it was, a new drone, bigger and badder than the one Loretta turned into a fireball. This thing was a beast, sleek black, twice the size, with a camera lens that looked like it could spot a flea on a dog from a mile away. It swooped low over the barn, hovered over the pig pen where Lucy was napping, then zipped up to buzz the roof of my house like some nosy paparazzi chasing a scandal. I clenched my fists, tempted to grab Loretta again, but I held off. Shooting the first one had been fun, but this time, I wanted evidence, something to bury Karen deeper than her own ego. I hollered for my cousin Dale, who was tinkering with his beat-up Chevy in the driveway. Dale's a big guy, 6'4", long hair tied back in a ponytail, and a permanent Red Bull buzz that keeps him wired 24/7. He's also the family artist, the kind of guy who'd paint a mural on your barn just for kicks. Dale, I yelled, waving him over. Grab your toolbox. We've got a new Karen toy to play with. He jogged up, cracking open a fresh can of energy drink. What's she up to now? That drone looks like it cost more than my truck. Damn right it does, I said, watching it dip low over the horse corral. She's not backing down, she's doubling down. I need you to help me set up some cameras. We're catching this sucker red-handed. Dale grinned like a kid about to pull a prank. Oh, I'm in. Let's make her regret ever buying that thing. We spent the next hour rigging the ranch like a low-budget spy movie. I had a couple of old security cams from when coyotes kept sniffing around the chickens, and Dale brought over a GoPro he'd won in some sketchy online contest. We mounted one cam on the barn roof, another by the oak tree near the steel line, and a third on the porch facing the field. Then came the fun part. Dale strapped the GoPro to Leroy, my ornery alpaca who spends his days wandering the property and spitting at anything that moves. If that drone gets close, Leroy's going to give it a face full of justice, Dale said, laughing as he adjusted the harness. Sure enough, Karen's drone kept at it all afternoon, buzzing low, weaving between the barns, even hovering over my truck like it was trying to read the license plate. The cameras caught every second, and Leroy? That fuzzy menace delivered gold. At one point, the drone swooped down to about 10 feet off the ground, right where Leroy was chewing some weeds near the fence. He looked up, snorted, and unleashed a green spitball that splattered the lens. The drone wobbled, spun out for a second, and climbed back up, leaving Dale and me doubled over laughing in the hayloft. That's my boy, I shouted, slapping Dale on the back. But Karen wasn't just playing drone games. By late afternoon, a convoy of trucks rolled in, 3 flatbeds loaded with more solar panels, a backhoe, and a crew of at least a dozen guys in hard hats. They didn't even glance my way, just started digging deeper trenches and pouring more concrete, turning the steel line into a full-on industrial zone. I grabbed my phone, started filming, and marched over to the biggest guy I could find, a burly foreman with a clipboard and a scowl. Hey, pal, I said, keeping my voice steady. You know you're on my land, right? I sent your boss a letter this morning. Y'all need to clear out. He barely looked up from his clipboard. We've got orders from Ms. Grayson. This is HOA approved. Take it up with her. Then he waved me off like I was a fly at a barbecue. I smirked, still recording. Oh, I will. But you might want to tell her she's building on quicksand. This ain't gonna end how she thinks. He ignored me, so I headed back to the house and called Donna. They're digging in like ticks on a hound, I told her. What's our next move? Perfect, she said, her voice dripping with glee. Let him dig. Every shovel's another $1 in your pocket when we sue. I'm sending the footage to a buddy at the FAA too. That drone's breaking every rule in the book. Sit tight, Jake. This is about to get real spicy. That night, I decided to do some recon of my own. I logged into a burner Facebook account. Yeah, I've got one for emergencies like this, and checked the Pinewood Estates HOA group. Karen had been busy. She'd posted a dozen drone clips, all time-stamped from that day, with captions like, monitoring trespasser activity on our solar site, and Pinewood stands strong against rural bullies, #GreenFuture. One video showed Leroy's spit attack, edited to make it look like I'd trained him to sabotage her project. I couldn't help but laugh. She was so proud of her little flying narc, she didn't even realize she was handing me a legal gold mine. The next morning, things escalated again. I was out feeding the horses when a beat-up sedan pulled up, and out stepped a greasy-looking guy in a cheap suit, snapping photos of my house with a camera that looked older than me. I walked over, arms crossed. Can I help you, friend? He flashed a crooked grin. Name's Tony. Private investigator. Hired by Ms. Grayson to document harassment on this property. Just doing my job. I raised an eyebrow. Harassment, huh? Like her drone stalking my livestock? Tell you what, Tony, smile for my camera too. I pulled out my phone, started recording him right back. He stammered, backed off, and peeled out faster than a jackrabbit on a date. Karen was pulling out all the stops now, drones, PIs, and a construction crew that wouldn't quit. She even had the gall to hold a press conference that afternoon, right on the edge of my land. I watched from the porch as she stood in front of a folding table with a Pinewood banner, yammering to a handful of bored neighbors about how I was sabotaging progress with outdated claims. She waved a copy of my cease and desist letter like it was a prop in her one-woman show, claiming it was proof of intimidation. That's when Dale had an idea. Jake, he said, cracking another Red Bull. Let's mess with her. She wants footage? Let's give her something to film. He grabbed a couple of old Halloween props from the barn, a plastic skeleton and a witch hat, and we rigged him up near the fence with some fishing line. Sure enough, when the drone buzzed by an hour later, it caught the skeleton dancing in the wind while Leroy chewed the hat to bits. Karen posted that clip too, screaming about vandalism in the comments. I sent it straight to Donna, who texted back, "Keep it up, cowboy." She's digging her own grave. By day 3, the FAA called. A gruff voice on the line said, "Mr. Callahan, got your drone footage. That thing's been flying under 50 feet over private property, filming livestock and people without consent. Multiple violations, state and federal. We're opening a case on Ms. Grayson. Send us anything else you've got." I emailed them the whole stash, Leroy's spit shot, the PI encounter, everything. Karen thought she was winning a war, but she was about to crash and burn. As the sun set, I stood on the porch, watching her crew hammer away at the steel line. They were in deep now, literally and figuratively. Karen had gone all in, betting her HOA crown on this fight. What she didn't know? I had an ace up my sleeve, and the table was about to flip. Jeremiah's trap was set, and she was dancing right into it, one dumb move at a time. By the time the Pinewood Estates community meeting rolled around, the whole mess with Karen and her solar empire had turned into a full-blown circus, and I was ready to play ringmaster. It was set for Friday night at the neighborhood rec center, a squat little building that smelled like stale coffee and regret. Word had spread fast after Karen's press conference stunt, and folks were buzzing about the crazy rancher trying to stop their green dream. I didn't plan on showing up, figured Donna's cease and desist and the FAA's investigation would do the talking for me. But when Dale texted me a screenshot of Karen's latest Facebook post, calling me a backwoods bully with a vendetta against progress, I knew I couldn't sit this one out. "Let's crash her party," I told him, grabbing my hat. Time to set the record straight. We pulled up in Dale's Chevy just as the parking lot was filling up with minivans and golf carts. Pinewood folks weren't exactly the rugged type. Inside, the place was packed tighter than a can of sardines, with at least 60 residents crammed into folding chairs, whispering and sneaking glances at the door. Up front, Karen stood like she was auditioning for a political drama, decked out in a blazer that screamed, "I shopped the clearance rack at Kohl's," clutching a clipboard and a cheap microphone. Behind her, a projector screen flashed a PowerPoint slide. Solar Future, Pinewood's Green Revolution, complete with a photoshopped image of my steel line covered in panels. I had to hand it to her. The woman had guts, even if her brain was running on fumes. Dale and I slipped into the back row, keeping low. Donna was already there, perched in a corner with her floral blouse and a notepad, looking like a grandma about to unleash hell. Karen tapped the mic, cleared her throat, and launched into her spiel. "Good evening, Pinewood family," she chirped, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "As many of you know, we've faced some challenges with our solar project. A certain neighbor," she paused for dramatic effect, glancing my way, "has been spreading rumors and trying to derail our efforts to build a sustainable future. But tonight, I'm here to set the record straight and reaffirm our commitment to progress." She clicked to the next slide, and there it was, a grainy still from her drone footage, showing Leroy spitting at the camera. The crowd murmured, a few folks chuckling despite themselves. "This," Karen said, jabbing a finger at the screen, "is the kind of harassment we're dealing with. This man, Jake Callahan, thinks he can intimidate us with livestock and outdated claims. But we've got the law on our side. Our bylaws allow us to use adjacent land for community benefit." She held up my cease and desist letter like it was a smoking gun. "This little tantrum of his. It's nothing but a desperate attempt to hold us back." That's when I'd had enough. I stood up slow, brushing off my jeans, and the room went quiet as a graveyard. Every head turned, phones popped out, and Karen's fake smile froze like a deer in headlights. "Mind if I say a word, Miss Grayson?" I asked, strolling up the aisle like I owned the place, which, technically, I kinda did where her precious solar grid was sitting. Dale trailed behind, grinning like a jack-o'-lantern, still holding that skeleton prop from our prank. Karen blinked, caught off guard, then sputtered, "This is a private meeting. You can't just—" "Funny thing." I cut in, voice calm but loud enough to carry. "This ain't private land you're building on. It's mine. Been Callahan property for 5 generations, since my great-great-granddaddy Jeremiah staked it out in 1919. And here's the kicker. He left a covenant says anything you build on my steel line, without my say-so, belongs to me. So, thanks for the free solar panels, I guess." The crowd erupted, gasps, whispers, a few "no way" s from the back. I pulled the folded county filing from my jacket pocket and held it up. Filed, stamped, and legal as hell. "Your crew's been digging up my dirt, pouring concrete, and setting up shop like it's yours. But according to this, it's all mine now. Panels, trenches, the works. Oh, and I'm coming for damages too. 'Cause you've made a real mess of my field." Karen's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. That's preposterous," she stammered. "Some ancient paper doesn't mean anything. We've got permits." I smirked, leaning on the table next to her. "Permits don't mean squat when you're trespassing. You didn't even check the title, did you? Just assumed a hick like me wouldn't notice." "Well, surprise, I did. And the FAA's real interested in that fancy drone of yours too. Been flying low, filming my niece on my porch, breaking every rule they've got. They're investigating you as we speak." A woman in a tracksuit with a proud Pinewood mom pin stood up, hands on hips. "Karen, is this true? You said this was all above board." Another guy, balding and sweaty, chimed in. "Yeah, you told us at the last meeting there'd be no issues. What's this about his land?" Karen floundered, her clipboard shaking. It's under review. These are just scare tactics from a rogue landowner who hates progress." She tried to pivot, clicking to a slide of smiling kids with a solar panel backdrop. "Think of the children, people. This is for them." I crossed my arms, letting her squirm. "Funny how you care about kids now, after your drone zoomed in on my 16-year-old niece sunbathing. Want to explain that to the FA, or these fine folks?" The room exploded again. A gray-haired lady near the front shouted, "You filmed a kid? What kind of creep are you?" A guy in a polo yelled, "I paid extra dues for this project. Where's my money going?" Even one of the HOA board members, a nervous-looking dude named Dennis who always seemed 2 seconds from a panic attack, stood up, clearing his throat. Melinda, maybe we should have double-checked the boundaries." Karen snapped, "Sit down, Dennis. I've got this under control." But she didn't. The crowd was turning, and phones were recording every second. Dale, still in the back, gave me a thumbs up, mouthing, "This is gold." I laid the covenant on the table for all to see. Here's the deal, Pinewood. Your president didn't just screw up. She gifted me $1 million worth of infrastructure. And I'm not stopping at ownership. I'm suing for every dime you've cost me, from legal fees to the hayfield you tore up. So, Karen, you want to talk progress? How's losing your whole project sound? A hush fell, thick and heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Then a teenage girl, probably one of those children Karen kept yammering about, stood up, holding her phone. I'm live streaming this on TikTok right now. This is insane. My mom's gonna flip when she sees what you did to that guy's ranch. Karen lunged for the mic, but I stepped in front, grinning. Go ahead, kid. Post it everywhere. Let's see how Pinewood likes being famous for all the wrong reasons. That did it. The meeting dissolved into chaos. People yelling, Karen screeching about slander, and half the board bolting for the exits like rats off a sinking ship. Donna caught my eye from her corner, scribbling notes and whispering, "We've got him, Jake." They're toast. I nodded, watching Karen flail as her perfect little world crumbled. She'd wanted a stage. Well, she got one, and I'd just stolen the spotlight. By midnight, the clips were everywhere. The TikTok went viral, 3 million views in hours, with hashtags like hashtag HOA Karen and hashtag SolarScam trending. The Pinewood Facebook group imploded, with residents posting screenshots of Karen's drone videos and demanding refunds. My favorite comment: "Can't believe we let this chick run the Easter egg hunt. She can't even read a property line." Someone even dug up an old photo of Karen posing with a Pinewood Strong banner, now captioned, "Strong at losing, maybe." The next morning, my phone was blowing up with messages from strangers, some apologizing, some cheering me on, one guy even offering to send me a pie as a thank you. Dale turned the best clips into a montage, set to banjo music, and uploaded it to YouTube with the title Karen vs. Callahan, The Ranch Strikes Back. It hit 50,000 views by lunch. "Dude," he said, cracking a Red Bull, "you're a freaking legend now. HOA Karen Files is gonna eat this up." I leaned back on the porch, sipping coffee and watching the sun climb higher. Karen had tried to bury me with her solar scheme, but she dug her own grave instead. The meeting wasn't just a win. It was a massacre, and the internet was the battlefield. Jeremiah's trap had sprung, and Pinewood was about to learn what happens when you mess with a Callahan. This wasn't over yet, but damn if it didn't feel good to watch her squirm. After the Pinewood meeting turned into a viral train wreck, I figured Karen would slink off to lick her wounds and let the HOA lawyers sort out the mess. The internet was still buzzing. My showdown with her had racked up millions of views across TikTok, YouTube, and even some local news blogs sniffing around for a juicy story. Dale's montage was pushing 100,000 hits, and I was getting DMs from strangers calling me the HOA Slayer. I leaned back on my porch that next Monday morning, sipping coffee and watching Leroy chew weeds near the steel line, thinking maybe, just maybe, this was the end of it. But if there's one thing I'd learned about Karen, it's that she didn't know when to quit. And what came next? Well, it was a twist even Jeremiah couldn't have dreamed up. Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Donna, her voice tight like she'd just seen a ghost. "Jake, get your ass down to the county assessor's office now. Something's up, and it's bad." I didn't even finish my sandwich, just grabbed my hat, jumped in the truck, and floored it into town. When I walked in, Donna was already there, pacing the lobby in her orthopedic sneakers, clutching a stack of papers that looked like they'd been yanked straight out of a shredder's jaws. "What's going on?" I asked, my gut twisting. She shoved a document in my face, a county filing dated 2 days ago. "This," she said, jabbing a finger at it, "is a zoning variance request. Says the steel line was donated to Pinewood Estates as communal property for their solar grid. Signed by you, supposedly." I blinked, then laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Donna, I'd sooner donate my left arm to a gator than give Karen a square inch of my land. That's fake as hell." "Damn right it is," she snapped. "But it's got a forged signature. Your name, Jake Callahan, and some chicken scratch cursive that ain't yours. And it was filed by Melinda Grayson herself. She didn't just overstep this time. She committed fraud, and she's trying to erase you from the records." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just Karen being a petty tyrant. This was a full-on criminal move. If that filing went through, the county could rezone the steel line, wipe out Jeremiah's covenant, and hand her the win she'd been chasing. I'd lose everything. Not just the solar grid, but the land my family had fought for since 1919. How'd she even pull this off? I asked, my voice low. Donna smirked, but her eyes were fire. She's desperate. Probably paid some sleazy notary to stamp it. But she screwed up, left a paper trail wider than the interstate. I've got a clerk buddy who flagged it for me. We're shutting this down, Jake, and we're hitting her where it hurts. We spent the next hour digging through county records with a clerk named Marla, a chain-smoking grandma who'd seen every scam in the book. She pulled the original filing, complete with a notary seal from a guy named Victor Ruiz, who'd conveniently verified my signature without me ever setting foot in his office. Donna called bullshit on the spot, and Marla nodded, puffing her cigarette. Seen this kind of stunt before? She rasped. Ruiz is a bottom feeder, takes cash to fake anything. I'll testify if you need me. That was the twist. Karen hadn't just underestimated me. She'd bet her whole game on a forgery so sloppy it was falling apart before the ink dried. Donna filed an emergency injunction that afternoon, freezing the zoning request, and slapped together a lawsuit bigger than Texas. We weren't just going for ownership of the solar grid anymore. This was restitution for property damage, legal fees, punitive damages for drone harassment, and now civil penalties for fraud. When she showed me the final number, $1.8 million, I whistled low. Think a judge will go for it. Donna grinned like a shark. With this evidence, they'll throw the book at her, and maybe a few extras for fun. Karen didn't take it lying down. 2 days later, she posted a rambling manifesto on the Pinewood Facebook group, claiming I'd orchestrated a smear campaign with big oil money to destroy clean energy. She even dragged out a blurry photo of Tony the PI, calling him proof of my harassment. It was pathetic. Her few remaining fans scattered like roaches when the lights flicked on. The HOA board, spooked by the fraud bombshell, held an emergency vote that night and booted her out, 5-1. Dennis, the twitchy guy from the meeting, called me afterward, practically begging. Jake, we didn't know she'd go this far. Can we settle this quiet? Nope, I said, hanging up. Quiet wasn't my style, not after she'd tried to steal my legacy with a pen and a lie. The court date came fast. A week later, in a dusty little courtroom downtown, Karen showed up in a cheap suit, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Donna laid out our case like a maestro. The covenant, the drone footage, the forged filing, Marla's testimony, even Leroy's GoPro clips. The judge, a no-nonsense guy with a buzz cut and a permanent frown, didn't blink. When Karen's lawyer tried to spin it as an honest mistake, the judge cut him off. Ms. Grayson, explain why your drone was filming a minor on private property, and why you thought forging a signature was honest. I'll wait. She stuttered, mumbled about safety checks, and the room snickered. The ruling was brutal. Full ownership of the solar grid to me, $1.2 million in damages and fees, plus a $50,000 fine for Karen personally. The FAA piled on their own penalties, license revoked, more fines, and the county banned her from filing anything for 5 years. She had to write me an apology too, which I framed and hung in the barn next to Leroy's halter. I kept the panels, rewired M to power the ranch, and sold the extra juice back to the grid for a tidy profit. The steel line? I built a new red barn there, with Callahan's Revenge stenciled in white across the side. Dale painted a mural of Karen's drone crashing, captioned "Property of the HOA Slayer." Pinewood dissolved their HOA a month later. Turns out, nobody wanted to foot the bill for Karen's disaster. Last I heard, she'd moved to a condo 2 counties over, blacklisted from every board in the state. One windy Tuesday, I sat on the porch with Donna, watching the sun glint off my new solar setup. She was knitting something ugly, sipping tea, and smirking. Could have just scared him off with Loretta, you know. I chuckled, tipping my hat. Sure. But this way, Jeremiah got his last laugh, and I got a hell of a story for HOA Karen files. The ranch was mine, every inch, and Karen's empire was dust. Some legacies don't just survive, they thrive. And that's a wrap, y'all. From a shotgun showdown to a courtroom smackdown, Jake Callahan turned Karen's solar scam into the ultimate HOA horror story and walked away with the last laugh. How wild was that twist with the forged papers? I bet even Jeremiah's ghost was cheering from the great beyond. If you love this ride through Pinewood's downfall, smash that like button right now. Let me know your Team Callahan all the way. Drop a comment below. What's the pettiest HOA move you've ever seen? And would you have shot that drone too? I want to hear it all. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join the HOA Karen Files crew. We've got more crazy tales coming your way, from nosy neighbors to power-tripping tyrants. Ring that bell so you don't miss a single second of the drama. Big thanks for hanging out with me today. Y'all are the best posse a storyteller could ask for. Till next time, keep your land close, your shotgun closer, and watch out for those Karens. See you in the next one.